really exciting. Now, I can say really with a happy heart, happy Christmas. The snow is beautiful. I heard True Father once at Christmas say that the snow represents purification. Yeah, everything is white, everything is clean. It's a new beginning. So let's drive carefully and make sure that it's a good omen and not a difficult omen. It was very challenging getting here this morning. Does anybody know the name of the three wise men, the three magi? Yeah? Tom, what's the name?
Balthazar,
Casper,
Yeah.
and
Do you know where they were possibly from?
yes. Persia.
One, the word magi apparently is Persian. Yeah? But Caspar, Melchior and Balthazar came perhaps from India, Persia and Arabia. Maybe they came on their own, or maybe they came with a whole delegation of lots of people. Who knows? Yeah? The sort of traditional Italian picture of the stable, completely unrealistic. I mean, totally unrealistic. They came to see a king. Whenever there's a rumor of a king, it is politically very challenging to the other rulers. So I'm sure that the local Roman rulers, the local Jewish rulers, all the politicians were saying, "There's competition to my throne, to my dominion. Let's get rid of the lot of them." Now, I wanted to show you the poster of the Interfaith Association. Very interesting to hear what Mama June was saying, about service. For the last 20 years, I've been serving all the religions in our local community. The Hindu religion, the Buddhist religion, the Catholics, the Protestants, and especially the Shia Muslims who are associated with your group in Birmingham. I had to give a sermon in the mosque on the day of the martyrdom of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Now, the day of the martyrdom of Imam Ali, everybody whips themselves in the Shia tradition, and they shout Allah Akbar to every single one of the companions who gave their life in the face of the local political leaders. And I had to go second after an intellectual from SOAS in London. And every single time they mentioned one of the Prophet's companions, they were shouting. And I thought, if I make a joke in my sermon, as I often do, they're going to kill me. It is not a time at a day of martyrdom, in the day of Muharram. Yeah, the day of martyrdom, you should cry, you should not make a joke. It's a serious day. So I ripped up my notes. I always have notes. I write notes about sermons, even in the bath. I bring a pencil specifically so it's waterproof, because I always get revelations when I'm in the bath. Anyway, I ripped up my notes and I thought, what do I say to everybody? So I said, I'm a born Christian. I come from a long line of vicars in the Church of England and in the Nonconformist Church of Birmingham. That's where my father's family come from. But I became a born-again Muslim when I was in India. I was working in the Afghan refugee camps in Delhi in the early 80s when the Soviet Union was invaded Afghanistan. Their idea of jihad was to get a Kalashnikov and shoot the infidels out of their Muslim homeland. And I said, well, that's possibly not the internal jihad, it might be the external jihad. But then one day, when they were trying to make me into a Muslim, I was watching the film The Prophet, which I really recommend that you watch. And it saw the Prophet going from Mecca to Medina, having about a third of his followers being killed. And thinking, what do I do? You know, I'm chosen as a prophet. What do I do to fulfill the will of God? It's a scary situation. It's not one of angels and la-di-da. It's a time of political turmoil, a time of death, a time of persecution. And then I saw Jesus come into the refugee house where we were, and he went onto the Sea of Galilee in a boat, thinking, these perverse people, what do? They don't listen to my words, they don't watch my actions. How I'd love to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you don't let me. And then I saw Reverend Moon going from Hungnam in the north through the North Korean capital down to Busan, through Pyongyang. He must have been really cold, miserable, hurt feet, hungry. And I saw Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, and Reverend Moon become one. And then I realized, as a unificationist, I'm a born-again Muslim. And so I said this to the group of about 120 men. The 120 women were next door with closed-circuit TV. They weren't allowed to come into the same worship room. I complained bitterly to the mosque president. I said, this is the first time since I got married I haven't eaten in the same room as my wife. He said, you don't understand our culture. I said, I'm sorry, sir, but I do, and that's why I object. Which I thought was a bit cheeky, a bit rude, but why not? You speak your truth as you see it, yeah? So I met the intellectual. He was a Islamic poet, and historian. And I said, my preparation in Islam, I don't know Islamic jurisprudence, I know only a little bit of Islamic economic theory, and obviously I've read the Quran several times, but what did you think of my speech? And I was willing to be crucified at that point, and he said, I will tell you one thing, young man. I like the young man bit. It really feels good. It's not quite true, but it's nice. He said, one thing I will tell you. You have lived with God. That is enough.
Amen.
So, amen to that. Yeah? So, we are so rich in our unification culture. But Mama June said, don't preach theology, serve. So I do loudspeakers. I run their meetings. I'm consultant to the Church of England. I go to the synagogue. This is Beit Ehud, which is in Hebrew it means house of unity. Yeah. I serve with the Sai Babas. I've sung for their Akhanda Bhajans for 17 years consistently now, with Andrew and Tom's help and violas. We got a Queen's Award for service in the community for our Islamic youth work. I haven't yet served with the Hare Krishnas, but that's one of my goals. And we brought a Russian Orthodox minister into the Greek Orthodox Church. You're not allowed to do that. Since 400 AD, they had an agreement to hate each other. So what we did, it's a bit like the Council of Nicaea, when you either agree in the Trinity or you die, sort of nice theological, that's why you shouldn't teach theology too much, it's horrible, yeah? Anyway, we brought the minister in, he gave an interfaith sermon, and then we did a photographic report for his bishop to say, well, we've broken it down so tough, And he was really victorious that the Russian Orthodox Church would actually grow up. Yeah? So, reciprocity. I was walking along the road down to Tesco's 2 weeks ago, and I was told, get your notebook out, write a sermon down. The title is Reciprocity. And I said, but I'm not on the rota for 2 weeks, you know? Why do I have to do that? And, but, you know, you can argue with your conscience, you can argue with your inner voice only a little bit, and then you just have to shut up and do what you're told. And then Viola said, unfortunately, Pastor Elliot is unwell. Could I come to help in, you know, she knew I was going to come and bring the loudspeakers down for the carol concert, but could I do the sermon? And I thought, well, you know, it's really easy to say no. But I can't say no because I was gifted a sermon already, and I've already written out my notes. So all I need to do is just to carefully get down to Cleve House, and I've got my notes already written. So reciprocity, give and take. Yeah, what does it mean? Now, why did I have this word? I thought, what's the goal of the unification movement and the individual members of the unification movement? 3 things. 1, mind and body unity centered on the love of God. 2, husband and wife, parents and child unity centered on the love of God. And thirdly, unity with the creation, with the natural order of the universe. Yeah, those 3 things. Now, how do we do it? How do we get mind and body to unite together? Now, I brought a few props here. Andrew very carefully trusted me to touch his handmade guitar, even though last time I was here I broke it for him. He's forgiven me. He's a very, very nice man. I told him hide the guitar because somebody will break it, and it was put right in the middle of the hall and somebody stepped on it, and that was me. This is a tuning fork. This has got a note in it, yeah? This is a guitar. Can you hear? I'm gonna do a note here. You have to do it on your bone. Hurts a bit. Can you hear the note?
Knee sharp.
No, not really, just a little bit. Now I'd like to do this. Now can you hear the note? For the note to come out, there needs reciprocity. Yeah? You need to have something which vibrates and something which creates the vibration. There has to be an internal aspect and an external aspect, and the two have to harmonize with each other. Yeah? So this is very much what unification thinking is. Yeah? In Sun Sang and Hyun Sang, there's an internal and there's an external. And when the two have a relationship, yeah, then they resonate and they produce some resonance, some sound coming out. Yeah? So my thinking is, what is the vibration that we create with our minds, which governs our body? Yeah? Do we resonate with complaint? Do we resonate with unhappiness? Or do we serve? Do we go out and give something to somebody else? Yeah? It's very interesting. Jun's testimony, in 1988, I was in the dining room of Han Nam Dong, Reverend and Mrs. Moon's house in Seoul, Korea, during the Olympics. And we told Reverend Moon said, right, this is lunch, but anybody got any stories? Anybody got any testimonies? And so Robert Kittle and myself, we said, we have taken your divine principle, we've trashed all of the Christian and Jewish quotes from it, and we've replaced it with Sikh, Buddhist, Muslim quotes. What do you think? And he said, he interrupted us, and he said, I know you're doing that. He said, I want you to work harder and do it better and research better. He said within 10 years, the interfaith harmony will be the one vehicle that brings the kingdom of heaven. So you have to understand how all the cultures of the world work, not just our own culture. So he said, please work harder. This is before the book, The World Religions, was published. Yeah? It was just when UTS was gaining its ascendancy of intellectual authority at that time. So we were actually giving quotes about divine principle centered on non-Christian topics. Yeah? I'd like to tell you, are there any Buddhists in here? Maybe not. I was blessed to be missionary in Sri Lanka and to do a diploma in Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And I was giving a lecture, it was the first chapter, and everybody was profoundly bored. Yeah, profoundly bored. They were nodding off, they were looking around. And so I remembered Sigmund Freud had made when he was being mocked, he made a very provocative statement talking about people's love life. So I said, do you realize that Gautama Buddha had love problems? Second chapter problems. Only I used slightly fruitier words because there weren't any children present. Yeah? And the room was completely horrified. You know, how on earth does he use such bad language in a so-called religious context? And I said, Buddha was born in a really beautiful palace. He was told, his father was told by soothsayers, he's going to become a great saint. So his father tried to prevent him from leaving the palace. He gave him girlfriends, he gave him food, he gave him entertainment, he gave him shelter, everything. And then one day Buddha looked over the wall and saw a sick man and a dying man and thought, I have to leave the palace and I have to find enlightenment. So his wife, and his son Rahula were sleeping next to him. Rahula was in the middle of the bed, the wife was on the side of the bed, and he thought, I want to kiss goodbye to my son. But if my wife wakes up, her tears will be so much I won't dare to leave the palace. So it showed that the parent-child relationship was the most profound love relationship in the universe. But the use or misuse of love and the centering of love on divine purpose was the most critical and the most crucial. So he didn't dare kiss his wife goodbye. He didn't dare kiss his son goodbye in case his wife woke up and cried. He just left. And 5 years later, his son became his disciple. And 11 years later, when women were allowed to join the brotherhood as a sisterhood in another village, his wife actually became his follower afterwards. Yeah? So, resonance, reciprocity, the mind and body, they harmonize together. What about man and woman? Can I borrow your guitar again? Yeah? Could you have a look at this guitar? Does it look like a man or does it look like a woman?
A woman.
It looks like a woman. It has beautiful curvature like a woman. But what about the strings? They look boring and straight like a man, yeah? Yeah? Uninteresting and dull like a man. Could you hold this for a minute? I'm going to play a G. This is a G string, yeah? And I'm going to play a G. Nothing, no sound at all. I can pluck it as much as I want. Yeah? When I pick this up, the G comes shining out. Yeah? So the purpose of life is fulfilled by the unity of man and woman, and by the unity of mind and body. Yeah? The man is dull and straight. The woman is beautiful and curvaceous. Yeah? It's only when these when these internal, external, and male and female aspects are harmonized, that we get music, that we get creativity. Yeah? So yeast grows, yeah, and it multiplies. 1 ear of wheat multiplies. There's apparently 64 ears of wheat on English wheat. So 1 grows into 64. The multiplication of life, yeah, due to a shared purpose, yeah, is absolutely there when the seed has reciprocity with the soil. If you have a dull soil that doesn't have the right nutriments, the seed will fall over. So I'd like to ask you, how are your prayers? It's a Sunday. How are your prayers answered? Are they answered?
Yeah.
Well, I prayed it would snow today.
You prayed it would snow today. You must be, you're powerful. Yeah? Some people prayed it didn't snow today. Reverend Moon interestingly said the answer to your prayer is determined by the focus and direction of your prayer. So I'd like to say, if there's a reciprocity between your thought and the thought of God, then it's more likely to resonate and create a larger sound. Yeah? If you say, oh, give me an easy time, give me a break, give me the national lottery winning ticket, because can't be bothered. There is nothing in nature, or there's nothing in the external expression of the physics, biology, and chemistry of God that allows for self-centeredness. Everything seems to be focused on growth, development, and purpose. Now, resonance. Does one have resonance with one's parents, or does one have assonance with one's parents? It's an interesting one, this one. In September 1984, I had my first child, and the one thing I wanted to do with this baby is to give it to my mother and say, Mother, I've been a really lousy son all my life, even before pregnancy, you know, even during pregnancy. But I've done one thing in the universe that will make you completely happy. She flew all the way to Delhi from Berkshire, yeah, to see her first grandson. So I picked up the son, I gave it to her. She said, don't give me the baby, I've forgotten how to do babies, she said. And I thought, oh dear, I've got to do more service, I've got to do more love, you know, to serve my mother. My mother was 70, I think, and my granddaughter was 3. Yeah, and you know what 3-year-olds do with birthday presents? They rip the paper out and they pull the presents out. But my little granddaughter is half Japanese, yeah, and she's got a very disciplined relationship from her Japanese mother. So what she did was she picked the presents up one by one, went to my mother and bowed and gave her the presents, then went back to the pile of presents and brought another one, bowed, you know, in a very Japanese way. And then my mother, after she'd opened the present, she came up to me and she said, David, look what you've done. And I said, it's not what I've done, it's what you and me have done together. She said, no. She said, finally, I've understood through your blessing what you've done, and congratulations. Let us see the divinity of God that we have inherited from our true parents and from their love and from what they have done in order to purify the life lineage of human history from today onwards. You know? It's quite astonishing. So joy and beauty come as a consequence of resonance. Yeah? Stress, conflict, and disease come from assonance. Yeah? Many physical problems are made worse if your mind is not calm. Isn't that right, Doctor? This is physical disease is not physical. Yeah, we are not physical beings. We're harmonized beings of mind and body. So if our body is hurt, then our mind gets hurt, and if our mind is hurt, then our body gets hurt. They work in an organic relationship with each other. Yeah, so unity between the mind and body requires a shared purpose. So what is the purpose of our heart and our mind and our internal self? To become lovers of God, lovers of each other, servants of all people. So that when you walk in the room, people say, "Oh, I love you, welcome home." That's how I feel when I go to the Pretty's house in Birmingham. Yeah? When Mr. and Mrs. Pretty open the door, I just say, "I've come home. I'm in heaven. They've welcomed me. This is the womb of God, the heart." Yeah, it even says heartland on the top of their house. Yeah? So it does what it says on the bottom. Yeah? That's what our mind should be. What should our body be? Our body should be constantly serving each other, loving each other, and being good to each other means we'll be good to the environment as well, and good to the created world. I played the flute this morning with Andrew. Was very sensitive. He saw me polishing the flute and getting it out, so he allowed me to join in. It's not a given. It's not a guarantee. But I'd like to ask you: could you hear the sound of this flute?
Yeah.
Can you now?
No.
No. Why? Because there's no motivation. Yeah? So when I want to do something, yeah, when there's a will, then it comes out physically. So I think the purpose of my sermon today, which I really didn't understand before, was we need to focus our mind on the fact that we're here to bless God, to bless others, and to bless ourselves as well. And to be creative by focusing our mind that we belong to the other. The music belongs not to the musician but to the audience. Yeah? The musician is not there for themselves. If they are, they'll be thrown out. They'll be rejected very quickly. Yeah? They're there for the audience. So before I left home a little bit early this morning, yeah, a little bit early. My wife had got up an hour earlier to cook an egg for me and to fill the vacuum flask with coffee and to say blessings on your way down to Cleve House, you know? She lives for me, and that's amazing. So I can't get that out of my mind. I have that experience every day on a daily basis, yeah, that I'm being loved by others. So the whole purpose of my life is to give love to others and to reciprocate so that it becomes louder and louder and more obvious, more and more present in our lives. So let us reciprocate with the will of God. Let's reciprocate with the three blessings of Reverend and Mrs. Moon. I'd like to finish with a quote from Mrs. Moon. That voices of truth and goodness are not silent is very important. If we are to transform our world, we must teach truth and practice truth, not only in schools and classrooms, but in our families, our communities, and the wider society. Whatever our professional field or vocation, we're called to set the example, and in this way, to teach others. As we become true teachers, we will multiply goodness and we will transform the world around us. A person who's cultivated a true parent's heart and a true teacher's heart is a true peacemaker. Thank you. Shall we have a few minutes silence?